Hello, everyone, and welcome to Midwest Super Pixel Pros and a special Super the Hardest crossover. This is I know we kind of had our final regular episode of Midwest Super Pixel Pros a couple months ago. I did mention we'll probably do an occasional special one-off here and there, and this is one of those. It's a special crossover. I'm going to be joined here in just a second by my buddy, John Lukey. I've known him for decades, and this you see in the background there. John can't see because he's joining us over Zoom. I got in the background. It says Shmuppreciation 2025. So we're recording this in March, and John, I've been a member of his long-running podcast and online forum, social media communities. Currently known as Mojo Menace and Super the Hardest podcast. Find on all your podcasts, social media apps, and streaming apps. They always do a thing in March every year for close to 20 years called Shmuppreciation, where they pretty much play shmups for a month, and we'll kind of mix in little scoring challenges and just talk all things shmups. And coincidentally, there seems to be a lot of shmups that maybe just released that year too. But with that said, I'm going to give him the big drum roll intro. Please welcome Mr. John Lutke. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Thanks for having me. Dale, you give me way too much credit because, we just kind of host Shmuppreciation, and, like you said, we've been doing it for a long time, like almost 20 years. But over the past few years, you've been kind of leading the charge on it and running it and hosting it and setting up all the activities and stuff. So thank you for keeping the fire alive, the shmup fire alive.
Yes, you're welcome. It's it seemed like for a couple of years, I think I think it was a long running tradition there, and I think for like a year or two, it was seeming like it was maybe on the back burner a little bit. And I think 1 month or 1 year, like maybe 5-6 years ago or so, I was just like, I'm just gonna post a challenge. Screw it, let's go for it. And these last several years, it's been a little bit rejuvenated again. So
it has.
Always glad to spread the shmup love. John, this has been so cool, just talking shmups with you in the past and as part of your community. But 2025, holy moly, John! Yeah, your podcast has been around in several incarnations over the years. Why don't you, for people that aren't aware, why don't you talk a bit about your podcast? I believe we're both doing through various incarnations, about 20 years of podcasting now.
Yeah.
The years fly by, man.
We started 20 years ago, 2005, and we had a podcast called Team Fremont Live, which we did for a number of years. And we are the kind of people, Mo Hilden and I, who just can't sit still and you leave well enough alone, So eventually we changed our name to Drunken Gamers Radio, because that's kind of how people started to know us. So we're like, all right, they call us Drunken Gamers, so let's just change it to that. It's a little snappier than Team Fremont Live anyway. We were the only three who even knew what that meant. So branding and all. So we switched it to Drunken Gamers Radio, and then as we kind of wanted to include other topics other than gaming, we just changed it to DG Radio, which not the greatest name, but again, we're not great at branding. And then a bunch of circumstances happened, and we were like, okay, we're going to change the podcast name yet one more time. And we've been going by Super the Hardest, based on a long-running podcast, Inside Joke. We called it Super the Hardest. And it is shmup related, because one of our hosts on the show was bragging about how he 1CC'd, which means a 1 credit clear. He 1CC'd a shmup, and we knew he was giving us crap. We knew he was lying. So we were like, what'd you do it on monkey mode? And he just blurted out, no, I did it on Super the Hardest, which makes no sense. But we thought it was hilarious. So anyway, we rolled with that. And you can find our podcast at mojomenace.com. Or like you said earlier, any podcast streaming service out there like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, all that stuff. We are, if you look up either Mojo Menace or Super the Hardest, we will come up.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And I think you started Shmuppreciation, I want to say like maybe 1 or 2 years in. It was real early on.
It was, and it again, like most good things, it wasn't our idea. It was an idea of another former podcaster named MC Wilson, and he did a podcast called Broadcast Gamer. But he hung out in our community quite a bit, and he knew how into shmups we were and how into shmups our community was. So he was like, "Hey, you guys should do pick a month and do Intergalactic Shmuppreciation Month." And we thought that was a hilarious idea and a great idea, so we did it. And to celebrate that every year, we did all sorts of things. We had competitions, score chases, things like that, but also things where people contributed, their shmup tributes, where they would write a story about a shmup or produce a song about a shmup. And then that eventually led into us producing an entire 3-act shmup themed rock opera that started out as a joke and got more and more and more elaborate as we went. It started out just us plunking away on keyboards, making very basic, silly songs into like full band orchestration, like all that stuff. And it got a little out of hand, but it was super fun. And you can also find the Shmopera is what we called it. You can find that on our YouTube channel, Mojo Menace.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of great musical. We've done a lot of great musical productions over the years. The Zombuzical, the Shmopera, some great. I actually busted out on Christmas time during some workout mix. I busted out a few of your guys' Christmas songs over the years.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. So, I've always found it interesting in the last several years. There's been this little reverse backlash over the term shmup. I don't get it. I don't. Almost since the beginning of Shmuppreciation, we've always used it as a term of endearment. Shmup, short for shoot 'em up, and shoot 'em up, the genre, or before I guess first-person shooters became into prevalence. They were the shooters before shooters. Now people recognize first-person shooters as, but now later they just call them shoot 'em ups, or we like to abbreviate it as shmups. Or in Japan, I know they're more affably referred to as STG, shooting games. John, what do you think about this crazy, more recent years? I see other just kind of YouTube content creators just growl and grimace over the term shmup. I don't get it.
I don't get it either, Dale. I'm an old man. It's always been shmups to me.
Yeah.
The heyday of shmups for me were like the Saturn, Dreamcast, PS2 era. Or those eras were kind of the heyday for me, and the genre was always known as shmups back then. Like I said, I'm an old man, and I fear change.
Yes,
it'll always be shmups to me.
Yes,
I don't get it. It's whatever you want to call it is fine by me. STG, shooters, shmups.
I've always kind of used them all interchangeably. I kind of always prefer shmups, but I'll mix in the other ones just for a little variety too. So, and John, I don't know if it's possible if you can lower your mic a little bit. Your bottom is just cutting off just a little bit, but
Sure.
Awesome, good deal.
I can.
Awesome, yeah, but no, so we're gonna focus on like kind of I guess one big game kind of that just kind of hit re-released just a couple weeks ago or in January called Under Defeat. Originally came out in Japanese arcades and was ported to the Dreamcast in 2006. And then it got a remaster on PS3, I believe 360. I want to say 2010, 2012, right around there. And now it's getting again like kind of like the definitive cut treatment here on current platforms, PS5 and Switch, and I believe Steam on PC as well.
Yep. It's on Xbox as well. Yeah. It's on all those. It's pretty much available everywhere now. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a modern platform, you can play it. If you've got a PC, you can play it. And like you said, it was a shmup that was released way back, I believe, like you said, 2005.
Yeah,
in arcades, and then very quickly ported to the Dreamcast. And that's where I first played it, was on the Dreamcast. I know you've got a local arcade that has the arcade machine, which is awesome.
Actually, no, I take it back. I just checked it out. It was at a hotel. And I was actually stopping by this hotel. I know some people there. I kind of stop in every once in a while, and they had it there up until probably, I want to say I was there as recently as a few months ago, and it was still there, but they just took it out. And I was like, oh, I'm going to play the actual arcade version. But yeah, it is no longer there.
Oh, that's a bummer. What kind of hotel has Under Defeat in it? That's crazy.
The local Ramada here. It's that. Well, they took it out, but now that's there now. It's Cruisin' Exotica and Silver Strike Bowling.
All right. So I played the arcade version in at a place in Austin, Texas. There's a gigantic arcade in Austin, Texas that has a ton of pinball and arcade machines, and they also had, last time I was there, at least, they had Under Defeat, and it's a cool arcade game. And so I guess we can jump in and start talking about some of the differences, and some of the features of Under Defeat. So it was developed by a company called G-Rev, which, if you're familiar with shmups, chances are you're a fan of G-Rev. They've done other games like Border Down and Strania, and they're comprised mainly, or they were comprised mainly of ex-Taito developers. So if you're familiar with like Raystorm and Metal Black and stuff like that, you're familiar with this group of developers. But Under Defeat is a vertical shmup.
Up-downly.
Yep, downly, yep. And the arcade version and the Dreamcast version had a very narrow perspective, right? So it was very vertical. It definitely wasn't the 16:9 widescreen aspect ratio. And what I found unique about this game when I was playing it is, first of all, you're playing as a helicopter. This isn't a space shooter. This is more like a military themed shooter, like a Raiden or something like that.
Well, if I could just jump in real quick, it reminded me. I always remember walking by that arcade cabinet several times, and just seeing clips of it online over the years. It kind of reminded me of like a 3D polygonal take on the old Capcom 1942-43 shmups. It was kind of like that. I don't want to discount that as far as this gameplay or anything, but just walking by it at a glance, I'm like, oh, this looks like a modern day Capcom 1942-1943.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of big, battleships and things like that, and tanks and whatnot. A lot of it's based like over the water. So, like I said, the battleships and whatnot. But you're a helicopter, and I think you have a choice of like 3 different helicopters you can use. One of them, I think, is just like a pallet swap. Another one, I believe, is just like this big tank of a helicopter. But what I found unique about it was, most shmups that play vertically, you're moving up and down on the screen, and left and right, and it's very linear in that way. With Under Defeat, it's a little different because you almost move at this like circular angle, right? So if you move to the left, your gun starts shooting right, and vice versa. If you move to the right, your gun starts like angling a bit to the left. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was definitely jarring when I first experienced it because it was kind of like a tilting mechanic of the helicopter, like a little bit of an inertia, because you got to your chopper won't recognize the tilting and the direction until you let go, and then you move, and then it'll really tilt and shoot in that direction accordingly, and it adds a whole new dynamic to the gameplay.
Yeah, and then there's multiple layers to the game. So if you mentioned 1942 and I mentioned Raiden, and if you've got tanks on the ground, they're coming at you, and you've got ships or planes in the air, they're coming at you, but they all kind of feel almost like they're on the same plane, right? In Under Defeat, if you got tanks on the ground, they take a little longer to get to you because they're coming up from 2 different layers, right? And so you can time your movement and shots based on that, because there's more distance because it's got like this 3D perspective thing going on. So that's kind of Under Defeat in a nutshell, at least the original.
Yeah, and it came out on the Dreamcast and in the arcades, and it's using that great Dreamcast arcade architecture, the Naomi, and just kind of playing this for the first time. I must have put in 2 hours into it over the last couple of days, and I made sure to play arcade mode on there first. It's like I believe it's almost as close to an authentic one-to-one port of it as possible, just to get a feel for the original arcade version before jumping into the new order mode, which because I put a few clips on while you were talking, John. It showed the lovingly referred to as tate mode, kind of, the vertical up-downly traditional perspective, the limited play field, and then with that Naomi board, I all of a sudden had flashbacks to that Dreamcast era quality of textures and polygonal graphics. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a Dreamcast quality era I mean that in the most endearing way possible. Just quality visuals, aesthetics. I was just brought back to many, many years. I always thought it was fascinating too. Those later years of the Dreamcast, after it stopped support in America, there were still a smattering of like 15 to 20 games coming out for a year up until like 2006, 2007. And in Japan, it was mostly shmups and like dating sims, I think. But it was cool to see that little bit of support. And eventually some of these shmups would trickle in here, like Ikaruga and what was it, Radio Allergy, I believe was another one, and Under Defeat. And I think, I don't know if this would be a good place to pivot into talking into the new world mode that this brings into this new version. It adds, I can't remember if it was added into like the PS3 and 360 versions, but the new world mode, it gives us a full widescreen. It really switches things up. How was it going from playing the arcade game to experiencing the new world mode?
Yeah, is it New World or New Order?
Oh, I'm sorry, New Order. New Order. Yeah. I'm getting mixed up with my wrestling terms. I'm thinking New World Order.
Yeah. So I'm quickly going to just address one thing that you mentioned, is that this came out on the Dreamcast 5 years after the Dreamcast died.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, right? That they were still releasing these quality arcade ports on it.
And these weren't like independent homebrew releases, actually like Sega licensed approved releases in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. Now, I'm not familiar really with the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. I'd never played those. I had the Dreamcast version, so I was like, I don't need it. I'm good. I got the Dreamcast version. So what I can say about your question is, how was it to go to the full-on 16:9 New Order mode? It was really cool, honestly, because the original game always felt a little tight to me. It had that old school arcade kind of vibe to it and that perspective, which I liked. But because of that kind of circular sweeping motion, it felt the play field felt a little tight to me. Now it's wide open, and it just feels loose, a little more free. But for me, the biggest thing that I wanted to test on this new version was the twin stick mode, because it almost turns this game into a full-on twin stick shooter.
I never had a chance to test that out. Yeah, I saw it in the options. How was it?
It's really good, and they did not break it. I was afraid that this was going to be like a multi-directional twin stick shooter that would break the game, but they kept the limitations there, where your helicopter is always still facing the same general direction. It's facing toward the top, so it's not like you can turn it around and go all over the screen, like a game like I don't know, Geometry Wars or something, right? You can't go all over the screen and have full control of movement and shooting. So you're always at that kind of general forward direction, which keeps it faithful to the original. But your right stick, then, you can move around and aim at most directions. So instead of like earlier when I said you move left and you shoot a little bit to the right, or you move right and you shoot a little bit to the left, now you can move left and keep shooting left, or shoot straight or shoot right, however you want. And it really opens the game up quite a bit and makes it super fun. It breathes new life into this, this old game, and it's really cool. I like it a lot.
That sounds like it completely revitalizes the gameplay there. I'll have to try that out. I did play a bunch of the New Order mode, and just seeing the playfield expand. I just played a clip a little bit ago, expand like tenfold. It was like, oh gosh, this could be a little tricky. Maybe it won't give me enough time to move around. But I think I actually ended up preferring it after a little bit there. It wasn't that bad. I really enjoyed it, and it's I think a stage I always try and play my best when it comes to Shmuppreciation. I try to do my best in 1cc here. I was able to 1 credit clear the first stage, and no lives lost. Didn't even lose a single chopper. And then eventually, after playing for a couple hours, I got the furthest in the New Order mode. I got into about, on 1 credit, I got to like about a third of the way into the third stage, and then eventually I ran out, and it was. I really love that second stage, though, the battleship stage, where you're in the sea. It brought back so many good memories of 1942 and 43 and all the various battleships that it was just Oh man, it was, oh gosh, all the memories. It was just coming back, and then you get a little further on. So the difficulty, as far, you don't really get a chance to. This game won't let you really credit feed it. I think they only give you like one extra credit to use, and they only give you a max lives of, I believe, 5 lives. So I think eventually I want to say it was the third stage after enough playing there, and then I'm like, okay, now let's see how far I can get just to have fun and experience as much of the game as possible. I see there's 10 stages if I counted right, looking at the achievement lists, and
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
I
It's been a long time since I've seen those later stages, so I'm not exactly sure.
yeah, and I want to say I got to the fifth stage using that one extra credit they gave me and doing 5 extra ships, but I think the fifth stage was a cemetery stage, I want to say, and it kind of was all eerie, and they didn't play. It was just like creepy music for like the first like 30 seconds or a minute before they get in the sound effects. So, yeah, your thoughts on like the degree of challenge, or like, did you think they could be a little bit more lenient with the lives and all that, or allowing people to play? Because I don't think you can actually. Another thing here too is I think you cannot earn extra lives like your other shmups. If you do hit so many big score milestones, you get an extra life in a lot of other shmups, but that's not the case here. This one really tests your skill.
Yeah, so I should preface this by saying I am not like a shmup pro by any
Oh
means.
yeah, same.
I'm a dabbler and I'm an appreciator. I
Yeah,
have Shmuppreciation. I
yeah.
love the games. I love dabbling in all sorts of shmups. I've got a huge collection of shmups or shooters or whatever, but I've never been one of those guys who's at the top of the leaderboard. So as far as challenge for me, yeah, it's a pretty challenging game, right? It's got a good challenge. It doesn't feel unfair though, and like I said,
Yeah.
it's a matter of coming to terms with the different perspectives that the bullets are coming from, so you can time your movements and time your shots and whatnot. Make sure you're taking care of those tanks before they get to you. You know, Dale. I don't know about you, but tanks to me and shmups are always the ones that get me. If
Yeah.
I'm playing Raiden or something like that, it's always the tank that gets me. You
Yeah.
know?
No, yeah, that's a good thing to bring up too, because there is you kind of got your enemies on the same level of playing field in the air with you, and then you on the ground you got to deal with these either like air defense systems, these air defense was it oh gosh, I'm blank, SAM missiles, that's what I'm thinking of, and then tanks blasting up at you too, and the game kind of recognizes that, where it accordingly you kind of have to aim, I don't know if the right term is aim down, but kind of focus on that direction, or sometimes, you know, if there's other buildings obscuring those land-based units, they'll get in the way, and they'll really get into the whole skill-based mechanics of the gameplay. And, you know, as they say, practice makes perfect. But in a good way. This did not feel cheap at all. This is it rewards, you know, the practice and the hours you get in. And the thing I love about Shmuppreciation when we do these weekly challenges is that I'm like, all right, I could get a little bit farther. Okay, now I'm on to the second stage on 1 credit, and a little bit farther, and eventually I just need a mental break.
Yeah, you know, so Dale, you mentioned something about that I think is relevant to what we were talking about earlier with the perspective, and that's those tanks, those stinking tanks. They can hide behind buildings, and because of the 3D perspective, your shot will not hit them until you either get around that building or they maybe move around that building. So it's another unique aspect as to where, like, if you're playing Raiden or you're playing like 1942 or something like that, those buildings do not obscure the shots in those games because it's all on a flat 2D plane. So that's another cool like strategy you have to think of. Okay, I've got this tank parked behind a building. I can't hit it from this angle. I literally have to sweep around the building and hit it, or just do my best to avoid it. So what I was saying about the tanks earlier, and they always get me, it reminds me of like if you're playing like Ninja Gaiden and there's the stinking bats or the birds. It's like these little enemies in these games always get me. You know, if we're playing like R-Type, another classic shmup, it's always the tiny little space bot, you know, that's like floating around the bottom. It's never like the big enemy that I'm focused on. It's always this little piddly enemy in the background.
You're so focused on the main ones that like especially on bosses when they you know, you got their little enemy underlings sneaking off to the side that you're not even focusing at all, and then you get you just get irked because like, oh, all those upgrades I built up all gone to waste.
It's the little pea shooter that gets me every single time.
So, were there any other elements of this new order new order version of Under Defeat that really stood out to you? I know they did a little bit more polishing on the visuals here with the new remastered HD or 4K visuals, and they added another soundtrack. From what I saw online, a lot of people aren't a fan of this new boosted soundtrack. It seems like I tried it out. I guess I didn't mind it. It kind of felt a bit more techno-y than the other ones. But I guess I was playing with a surround sound headset, and I was kind of getting into it. But I really like. I probably prefer the other three soundtracks included.
Yeah, so the original soundtrack has more of kind of a jazzy feel to it, right? And I guess as like a pure, the purist inside me is like I kind of prefer that than the more kind of almost, I don't want to call it generic, but it's pretty stock. The kind of techno of the what was the version called again? The
new order
soundtrack.
Wait, no, boosted.
Yeah. I immediately switched boosted off. And then the other thing I should mention is when I said that the new order mode has a twin stick mode, that is not the default mode. You have to go into the menu and select that. So if you're playing the new order mode and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't twin stick, I swear I'm not lying about that. You have to go into the menu and select it, and that's where you can also shut off the boosted soundtrack. The other thing I want to mention about the great new order mode is there is one kind of quirk that I'm like, they could have done better on. And that is the HUD, the heads up display with the score and your lives, does not shift out to 16:9. It's still in the middle of the screen, and it's kind of goofy. It's a little distracting because now your ship just flies over it constantly. And I wish they could have found a way, and maybe there is a way within the menus. I know there's a way to change the positioning of some stuff within the menus, but I don't think you can pull the menu stuff or pull the HUD stuff all the way to the corner of the 16:9 screen, which is kind of a drag. But that's something to note about the new mode.
But yeah, that's what always updates are for. But hopefully, I've been looking up the community. We should give a plug too. You pointed this my way a couple of days ago. There's a big, thorough breakdown of this on the YouTube channel, The Electric Underground. The guy does like almost like an hour deep dive into the game, and it was very enlightening.
Yeah, Mark from the Electric Underground does a great job of breaking down these really, people might call them hardcore games, right? He's really into action games. He's really into shmups, and he breaks it down in a way that like the average person can understand. And he tells you all these complex things that are going on in these games, in these shmups, in these action games. And he tells you this is why this is important. This is why the developer chose to do this, or this is why difficulty in games is important. Because he repeats it all the time. He's like, difficulty is content. So anyway, I really recommend the Electric Underground if you are into shmups, if you're into action games. He does great work.
Now, I guess we're kind of down to like our last 6 or 7 minutes or so here. Final thoughts on this Under Defeat New Order edition here, or I think it's just Under Defeat HD is the official term, right?
Yeah. Which, like I said, you can get on any modern console and Steam. I think it's great. It's $19, $19.99, so $20, I guess, which is a great price for everything you get. Tons of options in there, different modes. You can play the original arcade mode. You can play the new order mode as well. But Dale, I also wanted to just talk a little bit about G-Rev's other output. If people are into Under Defeat and they like what they're seeing, they like this game. There's also a game called Border Down. That they did just before.
I remember hearing of it. I've never played it.
Yeah, a couple of years before Under Defeat came out, they did a side-scrolling shmup called Border Down. This came out in 2003 in both arcade and Dreamcast. Unfortunately, there is no modern way to play Border Down, so you're going to have to figure that out yourselves. How you're going to play it. I'm really hoping that Under Defeat is successful enough where maybe City Connection, because honestly, City Connection they're the guys who put this new version together. They did a great job with Under Defeat. And City Connection's history is a little spotty. They got off to a shaky start on their shmup ports, but this Under Defeat port is excellent. I'm hoping they go back and do Border Down. Another great game if you really like Under Defeat, and you like this helicopter vibe, you like the perspective. It's not a G-Rev game. It's made by Psychio. It's called Zero Gunner 2.
Zero Gunner
Uh,
2.
Zero Gunner 2, which is on Switch. It is on Windows and PS4 and Xbox One. I think there might even be an iOS and Android version of it. Zero Gunner 2, it's got the helicopter. It's got kind of the circular sweeping motion. Again, it's made by Psychio, which is a different developer than G-Rev, but it came out in 2001 on Dreamcast. And it's an excellent, excellent game. And then finally, Dale, if you are still into this game and you can't get enough shmups, there's a game called Strania.
Strania. I've never heard of that one.
Not a great name. Strania. And it is out on modern platforms. It is, I believe, a G-Rev game. And it's like an update to an old G-Rev game that came out back in 2011 on Xbox Live Arcade. And I do believe it is on Windows as well, but it definitely is on Switch. That's where I played it. It's called like Strania EX, Strania the Stella Machina EX. This is a $15 game on Switch and other platforms, which I also highly recommend. It's got that similar vibe to all these other games I've been talking about.
Oh, gosh, so there's some good recommendations for you. Border Down, Zero Gunner 2 on Switch, and then Strania on all modern platforms.
Yeah,
exactly. I played Under Defeat HD on the PS5. Gosh, I used the surround sound headphones, and that was a tremendous way to play it. I enjoyed it. I want to go back to it to see how farther I could get it playing it legit. Hopefully get further. Even if I don't feel like I'd be cheesing the game too much using just the extra credit and using 5 lives, because it's not really that much extra you're using, but just to experience as much of the game as possible. But high recommendation. John, these last few minutes we have, I wonder if you want to touch on any other big shmups you played over this last year that stood out to you here. I got a couple I can mention while you get yours put together here. I was kind of looking up some other best of lists for the best in shmups for the year, and I guess for my shmup year over this last year, the last Shmuppreciation was kind of like the year of Raiden, and I think we did Raiden 2, the arcade port. Over and then also on the various versions of Raiden 3, 4, and 5 on I believe Switch and PS4. They got ported on there, like the Mikado versions or like those special editions. And those were a ton of fun. Raiden's probably one of my favorite shmup series, and I had a lot of fun with it. A week or two ago, I briefly dabbled with Mini Shoot Adventures. It's kind of like a
Zelda kind of deal.
Yeah, Zelda meets Geometry Wars. Maybe not a true traditional shmup, but I only had a chance to play like maybe a half hour of it. But I liked the little bit I saw, and yeah, I really wanted to play a lot more of it. And I think I may have briefly dabbled with a couple of others. I kind of looked up some other ones that were getting some love online. Devil Blade reboot. Raiden Nova, I want to try that. That's getting a physical release this year. It's pretty much Raiden meets Geometry Wars, twin stick Raiden. So yeah, I'm all about it. And then I heard there were some really good shmups. John, you may be able to speak to this. I think I remember you mentioned you played it before on UFO 50. I heard they had some good shmups on there too. Big shmup standouts over the past year for you, John.
I think you nailed a lot of them. I know we just have a little bit left, a little bit of time. So I just want to talk about one that I'm looking forward to in 2025, and it's coming out for the Sega Genesis.
All right, we are back. That evil Zoom counter, you may have saw it going in the corner. It got the best of us here. We got a little bit of wrap up here to do here. So, John, thank you for tolerating my technical snafu there.
No problem.
Yeah, but right when we're wrapping up, I think you're about to preview one of the shmups you're looking forward to coming out this year.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of covering shmups from last year, but there is one shmup in particular that I'm very much looking forward to this coming year. And Dale, it's coming out on the Sega Genesis.
Oh, yes.
Of all consoles.
I think I know which one you're referencing here.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're releasing ports to other things like the Switch and whatnot, but I am definitely going to buy the Genesis cart, and this is Eartheon.
Eartheon. Oh, no, this is something else. Okay.
Yeah, Eartheon, which is Earth, ION at the end of it. And it is in development in part by Yuzo Koshiro, who, if you're a Sega Genesis fan at all, you know his music. He did music for things like Streets of Rage 2, which is known for its excellent
legendary
soundtrack. Yeah. So it was supposed to come out last year. It got pushed a little bit, I believe, and according to Koshiro, it is in the home stretch and taking a little longer. But if you just look up Eartheon and find a video of it, you will. And you're a fan of the Genesis, or it's just 16-bit shmups in general, this is going to appeal to you. Very much looking forward to it. Limited Run Games is doing the physical distribution.
Are they still
Yeah,
doing
and
pre-orders on it, or did that window close?
not sure about that. I can look it up while we chat here. But it will also be on
Did
modern consoles.
digital modern consoles?
Yeah, yeah. I'll look up Eartheon
Yeah.
here and see
While
if
you
it's
bring that up, I'll touch on there's actually another one that I think it's still available for pre-order on limited run games, like in a Genesis cartridge, coincidentally enough. But it's getting a Genesis cartridge reissue. I presume it'll probably be available digitally on modern consoles also. But this one really, and this is getting unvaulted. It's not like an official reissue. It was supposed to come out on Genesis in like 1991 or 92, but due to like personal political differences. It didn't. John, did you hear of this one? It's called P47-2MD, I guess, for Mega Drive. And it,
that rolls right off the tongue.
yeah, it's a horizontal World War II shmup, and I guess they had conflicts about this taking no control, going against you play the Allies going against the Axis, and that kind of caused the game to get shelved. It was supposed to come out. The game was finished, but yeah, because of those internal politics, it didn't come out. And I looked up some trailers online. They kind of looks like, think horizontal version of 1942, 1943, going against battleships and all kinds of aerial Japanese military from back in the day. And it teases a big final boss clash with Yamato. I locked in my pre-order for this, and yeah, I am stoked. That's one I'm looking forward to. Were you able to find out info on Eartheon?
I was. So first of all, your P47-2MD, that is sold out on limited run games. So it's a good thing you got your pre-order in. It will ship, it looks like, in the month of June. And then Eartheon, I don't believe pre-orders have gone live yet. I think they're probably waiting for development to finish. And then the pre-orders will go live.
And it's interesting. I've got a little bit of probably like 5 or 6 now Genesis reissues of shmups.
Yeah.
They've been, I think, strictly limited and retrobit and limited run games. They're all collaborating to put out. They did, I think, 2 collections of Toa Plan shmups, and I pre-ordered both collections because I'm a nut. I just want to, I got the analog Genesis or whatever it's called, analog MG or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So just to play it on that, Truxton, Hellfire, Fire Shark, and Zero Wing were in the first collection of Toa Plan shmups that got actual physical Genesis reissue. I have that, and currently in production, and I pre-ordered it, but they didn't ship it yet. It's still in production. The second volume, which will consist of Twin Cobra, Slap Fight, and Grindstormer.
Awesome.
You ever had a chance to dabble with any of those in the past?
I have. I love Toa Plan stuff a lot. Like I play a bunch of their stuff. I've got a couple of their collections on the Evercade, which does, if you're not familiar with the Evercade, they've got a home console and a handheld version, and they put out cartridges that are basically collections of older games and some really obscure games. So I love the Toa Plan stuff. Another great one, Genesis cart that came out through limited run games. Well, a couple are Eliminate Down and Glay Lancer. Those are two classic.
Oh yeah,
Genesis shmups. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. Was Glay Lancer. I may be getting it mixed up. Was that the one with the kind of the interesting or the legendary T-shirt ad campaign, or was that a different one?
I think you might be right about that.
The guy with the mullet going as number 1,
Yeah.
and they did a reissue of the ad and the T-shirt there.
I think you're right.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a classic. I was so glad. I think it was Retrobit did a reissue of the Genesis cartridge, and they did a poster with the original ad and an updated ad with the guy 30 years later, no longer with a mullet, but I want to say it's Glancer, or I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. There's another one I'm getting. I kind of get the two conflated with. Is it Guinon?
Yes.
Or Guieres?
I think you're right. I think you're
Guieres.
right. I think it is that other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the three.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up all these ways we could play shmups. You got Retrobit limited runs, strictly limited games, reissuing actual cartridges, actual authorized reissues. And then we'll also have the digital remasters like we're talking about of Under Defeat and all the other many ones we covered today too, like Zero Gunner 2 and so many other ones. And then you mentioned the Evercade, and then we also have the mini consoles, the Sega Genesis Mini, and then we also have the Nintendo channels on Switch, the Nintendo channel, Super Nintendo channel. Then if you want to go the Mister route or the RetroPie route, there are so many options. John, this is probably going to be a little bit too broad. If people want to get into shmups, what's the best way you recommend people? We got all these outlets too. What's a good way for people to dive in fresh into shmups?
If you want to dabble in shmups, I'm guessing you probably already have a Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch has an insane library of shmups, and from all the way from classic shmups to modern day. They've got everything. So I guess that would be my biggest recommendation. I get also tied with Steam. If you've got a PC and you use Steam, all those games that are available on the Switch are also available on Steam. So those are the two easiest ways to jump in. And just jump in and start playing some stuff. It's gonna if you're new to it, it's gonna be hard. Some shmups are painfully hard. I said before, I'm not an expert at this stuff by any means, but I've been playing shmups for my entire life, and I'm no good at them.
Same.
But I still have fun with them. Just find one that you like. Find a good one that you like. There are tons of them on the Switch,
and across all themes.
Yeah, exactly. Tons of them on Switch and Steam. So that's my biggest recommendation right there. Just jump in and start dabbling.
I think I could concur with that 100%. Switch has just a wealthy library of treasures to choose from. No pun intended. That's a native developer that does a ton of other good shmups. And I think the Switch is a great way to dive into that. And I mean, it's not always 100%, but you imagine if they're getting reissued all these years later, there's got to be a quality, a bar of quality there, and the demand to bring back these classics from the past. Yeah. So, I know for this year for shmups, I'm looking forward to kind of busting a few out of my backlog here. I want to revisit. I'm going to hold it up for the camera. John, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. The Aleste collection on PS4 that I got with this dumb Game Gear, the Game Gear Micro. I think I remember I brought that to MGC a couple years ago. Yeah. With the magnifier, and the thing is still, you need a microscope to really look at. That's one I really want to dive back into for one of my shmup goals for the year. Maybe this month, we'll see. And I finally got this from Strictly Limited Games. I've been wanting to, it was like on pre, they took I think 2 years to put this out. I don't know if you can see it. I hold it up for this camera. Darius Burst Taito Sega pack for Chronicle Saviors Core, the Darius series, another legendary one. We actually got the super widescreen Darius Burst, I think it's called, the super wide cabinet at an arcade an hour south in Fargo here, and I played that, the surround sound and like rumble vibration feedback. It's awesome. Those are some of my shmup goals for this month, maybe this year. I guess to wrap it up with, do you got any shmup month or goals here besides maybe the score challenges we'll be posting?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep plugging away at Under Defeat because I love it so much. And that's really my biggest goal this month, is just to keep try to get as far into Under Defeat as I can.
Yeah, I think I want to keep plugging away Under Defeat. And I was going to mention this before we record. I think it's safe. I think we may if it's okay with you, have Under Defeat for people not familiar with Shmuppreciation. We always do like a score challenge a week, and in the Mojo Menace Discord, I think you can find that on mojomenace.com. I believe there's a link to it.
There is a link on mojomenace.com to our Mojo Menace Discord.
Yep, and then if you jump into the forums on the Discord, I'll post a weekly challenge. So, John, how would this sound? New order mode, highest score on 1 credit for Under Defeat HD.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
I'll probably post that here, probably by the end of this weekend here. Probably by the time people see this, I'll have the challenge posted on the Mojo Menace Discord. Again, go to mojomenace.com to find that. So gosh, John, this has been so much fun talking shmups with you this here. I was glad we were able to do this special one-off podcast to give a little extra for Shmuppreciation love this year. Any final plugs, any final ways to where to just find the podcast and all that here to wrap up with?
Yeah, sure. I mentioned it earlier, but if you search for either Mojo Menace or Super the Hardest on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, you will find it. If you go to mojomenace.com, you'll find it there as well, and you can just click on any of those buttons to take you to your podcast feeder of choice. And then we've got tons of videos and stuff on YouTube going back several years, and many of them have to do with shmups. If you're also looking to learn more about shmups, I want to plug a couple other people.
Yeah, I was gonna say if there's any other YouTube channels people want to learn more. I think you've always mentioned some to me in the past, some great shmup channels shmup YouTubers.
Yeah, so we already mentioned Electric Underground. Like I said, Mark does a great job, and he's consistent. He's putting out multiple videos per week, and it does a great job. And again, they're all in depth, really high quality stuff. And it's not just shmups; it's a lot of action games. Sometimes it's video essays where he kind of goes off on tangents about certain things. But there is one that I think is invaluable to anybody looking to get into shmups, and that is a guy called Shmup Junkie.
You've clued me into him before. I've watched several of his videos. He does extremely very thorough, very big deep dives, and
Yeah.
entertaining as heck too. That guy's a riot.
Yeah, he is. I think he's taking a little time off of his YouTube stuff for now, but he's got a back catalog of just dozens and dozens and dozens of videos. And he even has a video called something to the effect of how to get into shmups, like for beginners. Like here are things you need to learn about. If you're looking to get into shmups, watch that video. And then he does complete rankings of every Genesis shmup, every TurboGrafx, every Super Nintendo, all that stuff. He does complete retrospectives on things like Toaplan and Treasure and other legendary shmup developers. So definitely check out Shmup Junkie and subscribe to him.
Awesome. There you go, John. This has been awesome. Thank you again for joining me.
Yeah.
This is the time flew by too fast. So there you go. Definitely jump into the Mojo Menace or the Super the Hardest archives. A lot of big shmup love, a lot of big shmup coverage. 20 years worth of podcasts. I think in almost every March you guys would, for many years, was like a wealth of knowledge. And heck, there was even a shmup announced on one of your past episodes, Raiden 4. I'll never forget getting officially announced on a podcast. And this is when podcasts were maybe early in their infancy. The 360 version of Raiden 4, I believe it was the UFO developers on there. And UFO, they're still kicking. I think it seems like all they put out is just Raiden games, like one every 3 years, but I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yep. So that was exciting. Good stuff. I like that stuff.
All right. Well, we will wrap it up with that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, search up Mojo Menace or Super the Hardest on all your go-to podcast, social media apps, mojomenace.com, and Midwest Super Pixel Pros, special one-off collaboration here with Super the Hardest. Again, we're just kind of on for Midwest Super Pixel Pros. Just search Midwest Super Pixel Pros on your podcast streaming apps. So you can find all our past episodes there. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a very good Shmuppreciation Month, and we will see you all next time. John, hang on the line here. I'm just going to have our exit tunes play, and we will see. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this Shmuppreciation Month.